friends, it's Andy coming to you live from Orange County, California. I'm glad to be here with you on a Monday, March 8th, 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we're going to be just touching the surface on a couple things that are going to, I'm going to be talking about in further detail as time goes on. And that is about this issue. And I've been talking about it for a very long time, all the way back when the incident with George Floyd happened some time ago. Early on, I came on, and this actually was the basis for the show. That incident in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with Officer Chauvin, I can't remember what his name is, but and George Floyd, that led to just a months and months of rioting and looting and police departments being destroyed, just so much stuff. But early on, the issue in regard to race and systemic racism within law enforcement kept coming up. And so early on, I kept saying, hey, I've been in law enforcement for 21 years. I've been dealing with law enforcement cases throughout the world, and especially here in the United States and Canada, testifying as an expert in police misconduct cases. And I'm actually an expert witness in what would be essentially called police misconduct on some sense. Now, I get also asked, and have been asked in the past, to look at cases on the other side, the prosecuting side. But for the most part, the last couple of years, I mostly have been dealing with being contacted by defense attorneys of suspects believing that maybe there was some type of police misconduct. Now, again, I'm telling you this because it's important for you to know that I'm not coming from, even though I was a police officer for 21 years, I have the ability to look at both sides of the line, the blue line, and that is to make sure that my colleagues in law enforcement are doing the right thing and are, not overstepping their bounds or using too much force or what have you, that I look at things in a very balanced, I believe, way to determine the, whether or not the officer did the right thing and, whether he used the tools and resources in a way that was within the law and within his powers as a law enforcement officer. Hey, Amy, nice to see you. Heather, great to see you. Priscilla, awesome. And everybody's saying hi to each other. That's fantastic. I love that. All right. So just in case you don't know, I was a police officer 21 years. I've been training law enforcement officers for several decades now, not only in the United States, but also in Canada and in other areas of the world. I've testified an expert in hundreds of cases. I've been certified as an expert in both federal cases and state cases. I know what's happening at the border. I know people try to tell me all the time that they know what's happening at the border. And I say, you really don't know what's happening at the border. And so I have a long history at looking at all these cases in a way that other people don't get to see them. I can't share with you any of the evidence, obviously, but I get to see a lot of the evidence. And I'm telling you that I have been telling you, and here's one of my favorite signs here is that I may be wrong, but I doubt it, is that I understand and I know about law enforcement. I know that sometimes we can say racist things. Black people can say racist things. Hispanic people can say racist things, but does that necessarily make us racist? No, I don't believe so. I've been called Mexican my entire career. Hey, Mexican, come here. Mexican, give me the tape measure. Mexican, go arrest that guy. I mean, by supervisors, by fellow police officers, and I kind of laugh at it. I would have dinner with these guys. We slept in hotel rooms together at events. We've played hockey together. I've been to the birth of some of these police officers' children. Now, is it right to call me Mexican? Is it right to call somebody the N-word? No, it's not. It really isn't. But I don't, I've never lost friendships over the conversations that we've had where people have called me Beaner or Mexican or Wetback. I can't tell you all the names that I've been called throughout my career, and I am still friends with these people today. So again, I need you to understand that you can hear things, you can see things on televisions, on the former shows that used to be live law enforcement shows that I don't even think they're on anymore. I think they've been taken off all the air. But I just want you to know that there is a little bit of a difference. Now, you could be looking at me and say, no, there's no difference. If somebody called you Mexican, that means they're racist. I don't think so. I really don't think so. But again, that's for you. But as far as systemic racism in regard to when it comes to how law enforcement officers go after a suspect and arrest them, I have not seen that. I have not seen somebody, at such a level that it's systemic. Again, this word systemic is the thing, right? I see it used all the time. Many people who use it are just throwing it out there as if they know what it means. They've never really thought about what systemic anything means. Systemic means the entire system is racist, that law enforcement is racist. I've made a distinction between the judicial system. That is different than necessarily the law enforcement side of the system. Law enforcement, police officers doing the job every day, putting their lives in danger, responding to calls, getting a call, a male black committed this crime. Now we go after a male black. That doesn't mean he's racist. That means he's going after the suspect who is believed to commit the crime. Right? This all gets lost all the time, where somebody says, well, look, he's only looking for black people. Well, the suspect was described as a black person. To tell you, that doesn't make him racist. That makes it he's doing his job. I mean, that means that he's following the evidence, or he's following the information that is given. The suspect's a Hispanic. I'm going to go look for anybody that's Hispanic. Not racist. It means that he's a police officer. So a recent article came out and a study came out, and I have both. I have both the study and the article, the Wall Street Journal article, and I'm going to share a little bit of that with you today. And the study itself is about 8 or 9 pages. I have that. I will see if I can put the link to the study in the comments here. But let me go ahead and get rid of this frame there, and I'll bring up the article from the article from Wall Street Journal. Actually kind of narrows down a little bit of the study, and it'll be easier for me to read that to you. But this is from March 5th, 2021. This isn't an old study. This is a study from just the other day. The article is from just the other day. The study has been over a period of time, and I'll share that with you here. So I'm not going to read the whole thing. In a report released days before Mr. Biden's inauguration, so this was a report done prior to his inauguration, the Justice Department's Bureau of Justice Statistics examined whether people of different races were arrested to a degree that was disproportionate to their involvement in crime. The report concluded that there was no statistically significant difference by race between how likely people were to commit serious violent crimes and how likely they were to be arrested. In other words, the data suggested that police officers and sheriff deputies focus on criminals' actions, not their race. I'm going to come back to my camera here for just 1 second. That is what I told you 8 months ago, 9 months ago. I said that. Why didn't they hire me? Why hire me? This is what I told you a few months after that, when I did another show on this idea that there's systemic racism. And I just did it the other day, where I share the very same thing. And so I'm telling you, as a law enforcement officer and as somebody that knows a lot of police officers and have worked with them, I've trained them, I have listened to their complaints, I have worked with them very closely. I've spent evenings with them at the bar, in our hotel rooms together, talking about stuff. And I'm telling you, I have not witnessed nor participated in systemic racism throughout the United States. Again, that is different than how we verbalize and talk and all that kind of thing. You got to really have a distinction and understand the difference between the way that our harsh way of talking. We talk about dead people in front of dead people. We say horrific things. We have horrific senses of humor. You have to understand that does not necessarily mean that we're racist. The racism will show up in the actions of their handling crimes and placing people under arrest. So let me come back to this article again. And the BJS report did not take cops' word for who commits crimes. So they did not look at police officers. They didn't ask police officers. Rather, it relied on victims' own accounts of who committed crimes against them, as reported through BJS's National Crime Victimization Survey. The NCVS, which dates to the Nixon administration, is the nation's largest crime survey. Its results are based on about 250,000 interviews annually with U.S. residents who are asked whether they were victims of crime within the past 6 months. In addition, the NCVS gathers data on who actually commits crimes according to the victims, thereby providing an independent source of data not reliant upon police records. Because police records, as I have suggested in other videos that I've said, is that when police departments, when chiefs of police or even city council members and mayors want to show a change in violent crime, for instance, all they have to do is kind of juggle the numbers and reclassify how certain reports are classified. I hope that made sense. And they take nonviolent and violent and they change the classification to make somewhat violent down to nonviolent. Now you have less violent crimes because you took a portion. Let's say that I'm just going to use a wild, and this isn't necessarily true, but let's say that they had a number of crimes that involved knives, bats, fists and feet, guns. And you had these 5 categories of violent crimes. So you say, you know what? We don't think that fists and hands should be in the violent crimes. We're going to move those down to misdemeanor assault and battery and take those out of violent crime. So what have you essentially done? You've reduced violent crimes because you took 2 categories out. So that's what I like about the study is that they didn't take the word of police officers and law enforcement reporting, because that always can be skewed. And I like that. And I understand why they did that, because depending on who's in charge, you can shake the numbers around by just reducing and taking certain things out of certain categories. I hope that makes sense. And so that is the great thing about this study, is that they didn't do that. What they did is they asked actual victims about their crimes. All right. So I got to scroll down here. This is where the numbers come in. So hopefully you can stick with me on this, but this is important. The new BJS report took victims' responses on the 2018 NCVS and compared them with arrest rates by police supplied by the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting Program. It found that the non-fatal violent crimes that victims said were reported to police, whites accounted for 48% of offenders and 46% of the arrestees. All right, you get that? 48% of offenders, and they also accounted for 46% of the arrestees. Blacks accounted for 35%. Their population is less, but yet still accounted for 35% of the offenders, according to victims' reports. I want to remind you, victims' reports, not police department reports. 35% of the offenders and 33% of the arrestees. Asians accounted for 2% of the offenders and 1% of the arrestees. None of these differences between the percentages of offenders and the percentage of arrestees of a given race were statistically significant. The data is limited to non-fatal crimes because murder victims cannot identify their assailants. Those statistics, excluding Hispanics, hey, that's a bunch of stuff that doesn't need to be read right now. When removing simple assault, which generally isn't prosecuted as a felony, and focusing solely on the more serious non-fatal crimes reported to police, rape or sexual assault, robbery, and aggravated assault, whites made up 41% of offenders and 39% of arrestees. Blacks made up 43% of offenders and 36% of the arrestees. Do you get that? So more blacks were accused as being offenders, but only 36% of the arrestees. So less blacks were arrested as compared to whites and their offenders. As Asians made up 2%, and Asians are very low. Again, none of these differences between offenders and arrestees by race were statistically significant. Hispanics accounted for 12% of offenders and 21% of the arrestees, which was statistically significant. But again, victims not knowing the ethnicity of their assailants, even if they knew their race, to quote BJS reports, may have resulted in some underestimates. Wow, that's a weird word, of Hispanics offenders involvement in violent crime. So, to complete this, these statistics don't indicate that police officers are never racist. That's true. I've just said that. Individual officers, like people in any profession, run the gamut from laudable and to deplorable. But what they do show is that Mr. Biden's claim of systemic racism in American police forces is contrary to the beta data we have on the subject. It's good news that police are arresting those who actually commit crimes, and that the data does not support the claim of systemic racism. In his inaugural address, Mr. Biden emphasized the need for unity and said that the demonizing has long torn us apart. Yet, The president demonization of America as a land of systemic racism, a claim that he roots in the alleged racism of police, contradicts the evidence. It would be more accurate as well as more unifying to refer to America as what it has always inspired to be and what the data generally shows it to be, a land of justice. This is written by Mr. Anderson, who serves as the director of Bureau of Justice Statistics and the co-creator of Anderson and History, blah, blah, blah. All right. So coming back to my screen. So I really thought that's important to read this article and to bring this subject matter up of systemic racism, because I want to continually bring it up, because not only because I'm a former police officer, but I'm also a police officer that cares that police officer doing the right thing. And if I ever saw systemic racism in any one of the police departments that I've investigated, any one of them, I would tell you. Honestly, I would tell you. I know that Baltimore has some serious problems with their police department. I know that for sure. I know Chicago does. I know that Minneapolis has some serious problems, and a few others that I could point out. But that doesn't. But they have serious problems with when an officer is reported being a bad police officer, how they handle that and what they do as far as getting rid of that officer. Like in Minneapolis, with the case of this police officer, there is some reporting that he had a lot of. I'm going to read some more about this officer in a minute. That he had a lot of reports of use of force under color of authority. I yet now that I said that on a way earlier show, I have not necessarily seen that yet. I've heard it reported, but I've not seen it in anything that I've looked at since then. And I've been looking at this since it happened as much as possible. But the problem with this repeated story and notion that law enforcement officers are racist, that Minneapolis Police Department and police officers are racist. And when you continue to build the story up, what you're doing is you're setting up the cities and our country for a huge fall if it is not proven that this officer is racist and that he murdered George Floyd on that horrible day. This is what is going to create a bigger problem. The violence that occurred in Atlanta after a police officer, shot and killed a black suspect who used a taser against that police officer. The officer who shot the suspect who had a knife and paralyzed them. When you build it up that this is racist and these are signs of racism are not true. Neither one of those that I have found. And again, you can yell at me all you want. You can pose whoever you are on Twitter or Twitch or Facebook, and you want to say, no, that was right. No, I'm telling you, you have two violent criminals who showed that they were a danger to not only the police officer, but to society. And the officer had to defend themselves. And unfortunately, one guy got paralyzed, one guy got killed. It just so happens he's black. It wasn't done because he's black. It's because of his actions, just like this report says. That their arrest was because of the crime they committed. The fact they were shot is because of their actions prior to being shot. It has nothing to do with their race. White people are shot and killed all the time by police officers. And in the cases of when they're not armed, doesn't mean they weren't violent either, because that's the other thing that looks at, well, there were, whatever it was, 17 or whatever the number was in 2020 or the last time somebody looked, was that law enforcement killed unarmed black men. Does not mean they weren't violent. Did not mean that they didn't grab something and threaten to kill a police officer, or in their words or their actions, or were grabbed. I've had several white people, Mexicans, and black people grab for my gun when I was a police officer. And fortunately, I didn't have to shoot any of them, but I did break some arms. I did cause some physical harm to them that caused them to go to the hospital. And my police dog bit some people very seriously that grabbed my gun. They were white. They were Mexican. There was one Asian. There was a girl. And I don't think there was any blacks. So if there would have been one black person, would that then make me racist? Because I did it with a black, but I also did it with whites. I did it with Asians, and I did it with a woman who was white at a Rams football game in Anaheim Stadium. And so these are the things. And so what we're doing is we're setting ourselves up for a big fall. And there is a chance, and I'm telling you, and I'm warning you, all of you that are thinking that this officer Chauvin is going to be convicted of murder. He's not, because that's not necessarily going to be one of the crimes possibly that he is going to be charged with. This is a huge, serious problem. All right. Let's see what Sketchy Peasant has to say. I can't read it. Let me see. Andy, most people are incarcerated for drug offenses. Why are most incarcerated people of color when whites are use drugs at the same rate, if not more? Because much of them is involved in sales, not just use, but sales and trafficking. I can tell you the cases that I'm involved in on the defense side. When I'm defending, I get called all the time. I'm hired by defense attorneys. I'm hired by CJA cases, which means the defendant can't afford my wages or the wages of an attorney. And I'm telling you that I'm involved in way more Hispanic and white cases than black cases. And so I don't know. I want you to send me those statistics that whites are use drugs more often and are involved in trafficking. The problem is it's who gets caught also. And when you have a high density, like in Chicago, and again, I can't, my gosh, I can't, what's the word? There's so much, it's so difficult to talk about some of the things where you're going to get involved in some area where you're going to offend somebody. And as a law enforcement officer, one of the things that we talk about is that the one people that we often catch are the people that make mistakes. That's how we catch people. It's hard to catch people that don't make mistakes. And so and then the density of the population in a certain area. So in the downtown area of Anaheim is a highly populated area. And when you have a lot of drug traffic, most white people go to downtown Anaheim. At least they did when I was a police officer in Anaheim. They would go to the downtown area or the south end of Anaheim, which was a high densely populated Hispanic area. Now, if we were to go in there following a white guy driving into the Hispanic area, which is the only reason a white guy would drive into any of these Hispanic areas, and I know that sounds racist, but I'm telling you it's the truth. When you have a white guy drive into an Hispanic area, it's in most cases he's going to buy something that's stolen, or he's there to buy drugs. More often to buy something related to drugs, but every so often to buy a stolen vehicle, to buy a stolen stereo or a seat for his car, all the way down to mud flaps or whatever. It didn't matter what it was. If a white guy's driving the area, it was to buy something that was stolen. And you're saying, well, you're telling in that Hispanic all they do was crime. No, it's a higher density of criminal activity. And so when you go in there, you may arrest the one white guy, but you may arrest 3 people involved in that crime. So Sketchy, I'm not really sure how to explain this to you. You have to be a law enforcement officer or be involved in some of the stuff for me to really explain it to you and go on a ride along and see what's happening here. But Anaheim Hills, where I just was today, there's a high population of white people, but the way they handle crime is much differently, or at least it was in the days that I was having. It was harder to catch some of these people in the way that they did it. Because quite honestly, the white people would use Hispanics or use blacks to perpetuate their crimes. That is true. So it's not the police officer that are racist. It's the white criminals that are racist, because they tend to use the lower income, the easier to fool, because sometimes they're uneducated. They don't have fathers. And it is easier to influence some of these lower income areas and get them to commit the crimes for the white guy. That is true. So the racism isn't in law enforcement. It is in the criminal aspect of this whole thing. So Sketchy, there may be a little bit of truth to what it is that you have to say there, but you have to understand the dynamics on how this works. And if I go too deep there, you're going to, some people will yell out racism, but this is how crime simply works. In the areas of like Chicago and Minneapolis, we have a high density of black population that has very low school success rate, where black children without black fathers that have a positive influence on them and they don't get the education they need, you're going to have a higher density of an area that has a higher crime rate. That is true. That is not racist. That is true. And so, unfortunately, when you have the lower income areas, again, these are all Democratic run areas, by the way. Democratic run areas in Minneapolis, Washington, D.C., Minneapolis, Chicago. I said Minneapolis twice, New York, Brooklyn, a whole number. I could just go on certain areas of Seattle and Oregon. The density of these areas that have low education, low father involvement, and a higher crime rate often involve the minorities. That's just the way it is. You have the white criminals who tend to exploit these areas, and then you have a higher number of these things happening. But when we look at the study is saying when the victim calls and says, my attacker, the person who caused this crime upon me, is a black guy. And then who would you go arrest? We go arrest a black guy. What they're looking at is that did the officer go looking for a black guy because the victim said it was a white guy, and they found a black guy and they said, you know what? I think you're mistaken. The white guy you saw was actually this black guy, and so you need to forget. That's not happening. Now we see it on TV a lot. Has it ever happened? Of course it happened. But I'm telling you, it's not. And again, as this study says, it's not significant. It's not to say that something's systemic. Does it happen? Yes. But systemic is a whole different type of word. I hope I didn't mean to go too far on that, but he just brought up an important thing that you need to look at the entire package, the entire thing. It's deeper than just what Sketchy said in his comment. And I hope that made sense. I know I'm waving my hands a lot. I'm sorry. I do that when I get emotional. All right. So let me go to this other story here. And that has to do with this, this trial that's coming up, and then we'll end it with this. But we have this trial coming up with this officer, and I just when we keep repeating I hate to even call him president, when this dude that's in the White House who's barely there, his mind is shot. He was stupid before he had dementia. Now that he has dementia, he's a bigger moron. And so it's just so silly. He's not the one who wrote these speeches that he's given, but when you have this guy who's representing the United States right now, talking about in his inaugural speech, and then continues to bring up this thing about systemic racism and law enforcement, and then you have these crowds outside the Minneapolis courtroom, and you got the fence. Now there needs to be a fence, right? At the Capitol of Washington D.C., there doesn't need to be a fence because nobody cares. Nothing's happening over there. But in Minneapolis, because you've built this up, you being the media or you being the trolls or whoever that you are, saying that there's a systemic racism issue and now we need to do something about it, and we're going to use this case involving this officer. I'm afraid that you may be setting yourself up for a big, big fall. And what's going to end up happening, because their expectations are so high, to use George Floyd and to use Officer Derek Chauvin as the solution to systemic racism. I hate to tell you this. Again, I may be wrong, but I doubt it. I don't think it's going to happen. There's so many problems with this case. And am I telling you that what he did to George Floyd was wrong? Yes. Having his knee on his neck for that long a period of time? Yes. However, they're going to have a tough time proving murder. In other words, he planned this murder. He knew George Floyd ahead of time. He decided that on this day, George was going to die, and then he found a way to kill him. That for sure is not going to happen. It's not going to be first-degree murder because none of that happened. Derek was responding to a call, whether he was the primary officer or a secondary officer responding to the request by another officer. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which one it was. It matters that it was responding to the fact that George Floyd was committing a crime. So that you cannot claim that Derek planned to murder George on that day. So that didn't happen. So then you have these secondary, second degree, third degree, and all this kind of stuff. Minneapolis is different than California, where we have manslaughter. Second and third degree tends to be in that area of manslaughter. And you're going to have to prove now that in the process of the arrest, or during the time of the arrest, that Derek decided that he was going to kill this guy, in one way, or that his unlawful actions killed George Floyd. you think, oh, obviously we see it's on video. We see that he's on his knees on his neck. And obviously by his actions, whether he intended to do it or not, his actions caused the death of George Floyd. But did they? The problem is that there's some video of George Floyd who has something in his mouth, which we believe is fentanyl, and then he swallowed it. And there's a chance that it is the fentanyl that stopped his heart, not the lack of oxygen that stopped his heart. People say, we don't care. We don't care that it didn't matter. He shouldn't have been having his knee on his neck. He should have not had it on for so long. And so we can still say that it caused his death, even though it may not have caused his death, because he still shouldn't have had it. But when you're looking at 12 people on a jury, and I've heard over the last couple of days that they're having some difficulty in deciding what crimes they're still going to try. They're still, after all this time, it's almost been a year. Right. I don't know how long it's actually been. It's been a long time. Let's see if it says in the article. Let me look. Let me see the article. I'm sorry, I agree. Yeah, it doesn't have the date of the original incident in this case, but it's been a long time. It's been several months. We're still here, whatever it is. I don't know. Let's just say 8 months. If anybody knows, go ahead and put it in the chat. That would be great. But I don't care if it's 3 months. At this point in time where you have video and you have, witness reports, eyewitness reports, you got other officers' testimony and deposition, you have all this going on, and you're still at this stage, can't decide which charges. That, to me, that's problematic. I have cases that I've been looked at that happened just a couple months ago, and they're already in trial. They're already doing depositions. We're already at the suppression hearings. We're already doing a whole bunch of stuff. Some of them are murders. I've had some murders that only happened to come. We're here, and they still can't decide what charges to charge them. Why are they having such problem? Because they don't know what they're going to be able to slip by these 12 people. Once they get the instructions from the judge is going to say, these are the things that you need to consider in this crime. And if the crime that you get, the testimony that you get on both sides, after that's all done, if you can't say that this happened and this happened and this happened, you have to acquit. If any one of those 3, 4, 5, 6 things that are supposed to be involved in this crime, in the statute, you didn't find May 25th. So yeah, March, April, May, we're like at 10 months, right? 10 months, they don't have a crime. Thank you, Priscilla. You're amazing. We still don't have a crime that we're going to charge. They haven't decided on the crime they're going to charge. This is problematic. I'm telling you, you have to listen to me. And I am a little worried. Like I would, gosh, I can't even say it. I can't, because it's almost like you have to convict this officer. He has to be convicted. If he doesn't get, if there's any less than conviction, like I said, okay, there's 2 things. If he doesn't get convicted, if they go too high, if they try to go for murder 1, I don't think they're going to get it. I think you're going to have 1 or 2 people in this jury of 12. They're going to say it could have been the fentanyl that killed him. They didn't show me. They didn't show me that it was the knee on the neck that killed him. There's nothing. There's a possibility that could have been the fentanyl. If it was the fentanyl that killed him, then it's not murder 1. That's the problem. If the knee on the neck was one of the things in addition to the fentanyl, then you may be able to squeak with one of these lesser homicide, murder 2, murder 3, possibly. But again, you may have 1 or 2 people, and again, that's all you need. 1 or 2 people to say, I don't know. I think it was the fentanyl that killed him. I don't think it was the knee. So they have to be careful if they say that assault under color of authority, that we got, and we can give him, whatever the penalty is for that. Is it 10 years, 15 years, 25 years? I don't know. But what's not going to make people happy? Here's the problem, is that what they want is they want murder. They want this officer to sit in the electric chair. They want him to hang by a rope. They want him to stand in front of a firing squad. The problem is, I don't believe that they're going to be able to do that. They're setting themselves up for a failure of huge proportions. Is that the right word? There's something else I think I can say that. Astronomical proportions. I'm not sure. It's going to be problematic. And I'm sad to say that it's the media, it's the president, it's certain politicians. It is the chief of police in Minneapolis, quite possibly. It is the mayor in Minneapolis. It is the DA in Minneapolis who have set this city, this state, and the United States up for a huge problem at the time that they may come to convict this guy. When we look at this article, and I'm just going to this one last thing, and then I'm going to leave it at this because there's probably more that needs to be discussed. Is they're going to look at this officer, and I'm going to scroll down here. What do we know about Derek Chauvin? Chauvin. I keep calling him Chauvin, but it's Chauvin. And let me just read what it says here. Derek Chauvin, 44, had been a police officer with Minneapolis Police Department for more than 19 years before George Floyd's death. During that time, he was the subject of at least 22 complaints and internal investigations. Now, let me just come back to this. That's the thing. 22 complaints and investigations. You can have, as a police officer, in that amount of time in a very busy area, you can have those happen and be a very good cop, I hate to say. It depends on the level of those complaints. Are some of those similar to what happened to George Floyd? If you have enough of those where he kneeled on my neck and I thought I was going to die type of complaints, if you have 5, if you have 4, then some of those complaints can be looked at. Yeah, this officer has tried to kill a few people. Not only George Floyd just happened to die, right? He happened to also be under the influence of drugs when he died. You may be able to get some of that, maybe that murder 2 or murder 3, because now he's done it several times. If you have one, it's going to be hard, but you might still get it. But if none of those are like that, if they're just people didn't like the way he said something, didn't like the way he talked to him, if most of those 22 people are white people, if some of them are just didn't like the way that maybe he didn't take a report when he should have taken a report. We don't know necessarily what those 22 complaints are. I have not been able to find all of them. I've heard, and I don't want to, again, that's just word of mouth from other police officers that may or may not, and I don't want to give away too much. I've heard a lot of different things from people who said they should know, but they don't jive. So I don't have enough yet to know for sure what those 22 complaints and internal investigations are. I had quite a few in my days, and I can tell you that none of them were anything close to, something that you would be concerned about as a law-abiding citizen, that I was going to come and attack you. People love to complain. Just look at, what is that app that people use for grading restaurants? I've used it. I actually paid for, the ability to do that. What's that called? Shoot. The one. People complain all the time about everything. A restaurant that can actually be fantastic and have like 5 or 10, 15, 20, 25 complaints against it because people just are horrible people. I forget what it's called. Priscilla knows. She'll tell me what it is. It's very popular. Yelp. Yes. So look on Yelp. I mean, you could be doing a good job, but what happens when you have a competitor? Competitors complain and say you tried to kill them with your food, and quite often it's competitors. So it's like Yelp, right? You're going to get complaints. If you're a police officer, if you're not doing your job, you'll never get a complaint. Right? If you never show up to a call, you'll never get a complaint. It's the officers that are highly active, involved, and doing a whole bunch of stuff. Dine and Dash, that one also did. Yeah, that one also. All right. So let's get back to this thing. So that's the other things. I just want you to take all this into consideration. And I hope I'm not sound like I'm trying to treat you like somebody doesn't know, but this is true. As a police officer, if you're working any amount of time as a law enforcement officer, especially in a very busy area where you're arresting people on a regular basis, you will get a complaint. And 22 could be a lot. It may not be very many, just to tell you the truth. And so let's get back into this. So one of the episodes led to 2 letters of reprimand, his only formal discipline. So he only got 2 letters of reprimand. Now, is there a problem maybe with leadership? Possibly. I've addressed that in some of the cases that I've been investigated, that the leadership was asleep when they should have disciplined somebody more and they didn't. I've been able to say that in court myself. But only 2 letters of reprimand in 21 or 19 years of service, that's not too bad, I got to tell you. I think I had 2 letters of reprimand, and I was also Officer of the Year. I had Career Achievement Award, and I had all kinds of other awards during my period of time, but also had 2 letters of reprimand. Mr. Chauvin worked in one of Minneapolis' busiest precincts on its most difficult shift from 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. That is true. That is not an easy shift to work, especially if you're working the weekends. Long after many officers of his age have moved to different positions, he earned several awards. That is a problem. He earned several awards, including 2 medals of valor after separate confrontation in which he shot at suspects, one of whom died. Mr. Chauvin, who is white, was filmed on May 25th of last year. Oh, there's the May 25th. Thank you. It's in the article of last year. It's at the end. I was looking at the beginning. Holding a knee on the neck of George Floyd, blah, blah, blah. Not the blah, blah, blah. There's one other thing I wanted to read here. His wife filed for divorce after 10 years. They claim that he's an awkward and rigid workaholic. I don't know if that makes him a killer. I know lots of police officers that are awkward workaholics, but they were really good at their job. Prosecutors are expected to tell jurors about his arrest of a black woman, a single black woman. That's again, this one person previous make him a bad guy. I don't know. Who has said that Mr. Chauvin kept his knee on her body while she was handcuffed and face down on the ground and pleading, "Don't kill me." Another interaction considering relevant, Mr. Chauvin saved a suicidal man's life by placing him on his side and riding with him to the hospital. The reason I think that's significant is because it shows that he knew how important it was to avoid creating a breathing problem for people who were restrained. The interesting thing is the suicidal man a black guy? That is going to be important to know too. So much. I mean, so much. This is going to be an interesting case. I can't wait to follow it. I'm telling you that the knee on a person's body, I cannot tell you. I cannot tell you how many times I had a knee on a suspect's body when I was that is the technique that we were taught in the academy, to place your knee on the small of the back, not on the neck like Chauvin had it, or Chauvin had it. Placing your knee on the body of a suspect is a very common arrest technique. Placement of the knee as you're arresting somebody. Always, as you're approaching somebody. Maybe I can draw that. I'm going to try. Hold on. I'm not an artist. I don't claim to be one. But when you have a body on the ground, let's see. Here's a body. Oh, that's a guy. That guy's got a big head. Hold on. So here's a body. Oh my gosh, that's a really bad leg. Hold on. I'm not an artist. I told you I'm not an artist. There you go. So this is on the ground. He's face down. So this is his hair. All right. So he's face down. All right. When you approach, can you see with my knee? It's probably hard to see. I know. Oh, I can't do it. So when you approach with him face down, you have him put his hands behind his back. And you approach and you put your knee right here. So you approach from this direction and you put your knee on the small of his back and your other knee here, so to speak, and then you handcuff him. So in between your legs, you have the suspect, but your knees are on his body. This black lady claiming that he had his knees on her body, that is totally normal. So they'll certainly have experts come in to testify. Is the arrest technique, is it common to put your knee on somebody's body? Yes, near the small, right back here, right below the neck area. Not uncommon to do that. Now, remembering also when you're wrestling with people and you're doing a bunch of stuff, that knee can move and it can end up on somebody's neck. It can end up on the back of somebody's head, pushing their face into the asphalt. This police work is not pretty. Arresting somebody who's combative is not pretty. Chauvin, the officer, Derek, can also claim we have video, sure, but there's also a bunch of other stuff that happened previous to seeing the knee on his neck. That every time, Derek can say, every time I tried to give him a break, every time I tried to relieve him of some pressure, he took advantage of it. He's bigger than I am. He's a criminal that I've had to deal with. I know of him, that he's very dangerous. He knows how to fight. He knows a bunch of moves. And every time I tried to give him a break, he combative. The only way I found to be able to control him was have my knee on his neck. That's probably going to be one of the things he says. I can't tell you for sure, but I can tell you that he's going to say that I tried everything to control this guy. The only time that I found that I could control him was where my knee was. And when I was afraid for his safety, And that's another valuable defense for his safety and my safety, so they didn't have to use any more force. That is where I found myself. I didn't know what else to do. Yes, I did hear that, but quite often people will claim that they can't breathe. Who knows? He can go on. And then the defense is going to come in and say, well, he also had just taken fentanyl, and the fentanyl is what stopped his heart. It wasn't the lack of oxygen. And they're going to bring in the coroner's report. And they're going to, Carol wanted me to cross the legs in the drawing. Yeah. So I got Carol. I got complaints for my dirty looks, hard to cover up. No common sense. You got the look. Absolutely. The video showing George Floyd begging the officers to lay him on the ground, but the news never showed it. Yeah. The officer, I think what you mean, the officers begging him to lay on the ground. Maybe, I don't know. But yes. Yeah, Yelp is a scam. It is a scam. I paid hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and I couldn't. Yeah, I had mostly competitors complaints against me. Probably some in the neighborhood of 22. So it doesn't matter. All right. I hope I brought this together, because it's important to understand what the news media is talking about, systemic racism, because with George Floyd, that's kind of when all this stuff kind of came back again. It rears its ugly head every so often. But with George Floyd, it has now not gone away. And this constant barrage of systemic racism, cops are bad, we need to defund, dismantle law enforcement because they're horrible people, is simply not true, number one. But with that, you have the George Floyd thing, which is supposed to be the cure, right? Whatever happens to this officer is supposed to, him dying in the electric chair is supposed to be the cure. Number one, he's not. I can tell you right now, he's not. Because he didn't go to work that day thinking he's going to kill George Floyd. He didn't have a plan all up. He didn't get a hold of other people and say, listen, I'm going to kill George Floyd tonight. No. So he's not going to have murder one. So he's not going to be, not going to face any life in prison. He's not going to receive the death penalty. He's going to receive some type of charge. After almost a year, they still can't decide what they're going to charge him with, which is a problem. If you don't know that that's a problem, I'm telling you that's a problem, because they know if they go too high and can't meet the burden, he's going to get away. Or they're going to find him guilty of assault and battery, which he's probably already served enough time for assault and battery, and he's going to be set free. People are going to go crazy. Buildings are going to burn. Looting and looting is going to happen. It's going to be very, very bad. I don't know that they're going to charge him with anything that's going to satisfy the mob. I'm going to tell you that right now. That's my prediction, that they're not going to, there's a chance they're going to go too high with the charge, and they're not going to be able to convict him of that. And he's going to get charged with a lesser crime, thereby only getting something like 10 years. And in the end, he's probably only going to serve, a couple years. That's probably what's going to happen. I think one of the other things that may happen is they may charge him with a very probably murder 3. And again, Minnesota's law is different than here in California, so I'm not 100% sure of all the elements of that particular crime. But the 3 is not very long, maybe 10 years probably, or 15 years. And when they convict them of that, if they do, and if they're able to do that, that's not going to satisfy the mob. It's not. I don't care what you say. If they can't even convict him of that because of 1 or 2 jurors that they just did not do a good job, I think even the defense attorney, understands that, man, they kind of hope that, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know. I can't even say this because I don't want to say anything that's too hyperbolic. It's almost like, God, he's got to go down for something, right? Because that's the problem. And I'm not laughing at George Floyd's death. I'm not. I'm just laughing at the fact that this is going to be a huge problem. That it's almost like, God, he's got to go down for something big. If not, the whole country's going to fry. The problem is, if you just have one person who's listening to the element, these are the elements that I'm supposed to see. And if the defense does their job and brings up some of these issues, there's going to be quite possibly 1 or 2 people that say it's possible, a reasonable doubt. Have you heard that before? It's a reasonable doubt that it wasn't the knee on his neck that killed him, that it was the fentanyl. that it wasn't the knee on his neck. It was all the drugs that he took ahead of time and his poor health from years and years of drug use. And that's what killed him. It wasn't just the knee. The knee was maybe something that obviously this shouldn't happen. So we're willing to convict him of assault under color of authority, and we'll give him parole. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be bad. So I'm just preparing you. If they convict him of murder one, it's because of a whole bunch of other stuff. It's not necessarily because that's what happened. Am I saying that Derek is, Officer Derek Chauvin is a good guy? No, I don't know. Am I saying that he shouldn't have done what he did? No, he should not have done that. He should not have been on video with his knee on his neck as long as he did, because I've never had to do that. I've arrested a lot of people. I'm not that big of a guy, and I've been able to arrest plenty of people. My dog by himself has bit nearly 80 bad guys, felony hardened criminals. And none of them did I have to kneel on their neck for long periods of time. So I'm not telling you that's okay. I'm just telling you they're going to have a problem, because I don't think the mob's going to get what they want. They're not going to get what they want. They want this officer to go down and get life imprisonment or get the death penalty. That is not going to happen. And the problem is the media and the politicians and everybody involved on the other side of this case has set our country up for failure. It's going to be bad. All right, my friends, I just wanted to kind of bring that up. I know, more good news from the Andy Falco Show. Send the people complaining to defensive training for a day. Absolutely. I agree. Nothing will satisfy the mob. Yeah, we are doomed. We should just get it over with. Just get this trial over with. Let's have the looting and everything happen. And let's just get back to a normal day. I have a couple things here. Maybe you didn't know, but your writing buddy had defensive training. Oh, I know you did. I'm having this thought. I'm not sure when to have this, but I want to have a mask burning party. And I want it to be fairly public. I want to be able to do the show from the mask burning party. And I'm really not quite sure. I want to know if there's anybody out there. Hedy and I talked about it earlier today, and she goes, "Oh, that would be kind of cool." And so when we can, actually say California said that, the masking mandate is no longer present. I know other states have done it, I know, but in California, I want to be able to do a very public mask burning party, and I want to broadcast from it. If anybody wants to join in on that, and obviously I need it to be in Orange County because that's where I live, and I have too many kids to be able to be traveling somewhere. But I'm just kind of thinking through. If anybody has thought about that in Orange County or in this area, that would be great. I think we have something going on tomorrow. I didn't see the reply yet, but we have something happening tomorrow here in Orange County for the school board meeting that's happening. I believe it's tomorrow, and so we'll be looking at that. Virtual. Maybe we'll do like a countrywide. It's almost like a Hands Across America. It'll be mask burning across America, because I know California will be the last to lift the mask mandate. So it'll be a day of mask burning across America. How about that? That'll be awesome. Priscilla says she'll come to town for that. That'd be awesome. So I don't know. I just kind of had that thought over the last couple of days, like just kind of some type of mask burning, very public. Do it online. It'll be great. All right, my friends, I'm going to, as soon as I know more about what's happening tomorrow, somebody send me a message. Karen sent me a message about a rally tomorrow. I'm not sure if it's in relationship to the school board meeting or not, or what's happening, but I'll look into it some more, and then somehow, somewhere, do an announcement about what's happening here tomorrow. All right, my friends, love you guys so much for watching. Thank you for watching, and I will see you at the next one. All right, take care. Talk to you later. Bye.